Recap. I know I didn't preach on Sunday, but I still want to recap a little bit about what Pastor Jason talked about from Sunday, and that was on Jonah chapter 2. If you have been reading through Jonah, you know chapter 2 is where Jonah is in the belly of the fish, and his prayer that comes out of his experience is a powerful one. Pastor Jason pointed out how important it is for us to know that it doesn't matter where our prayer comes from, that God will be able to hear us. Jonah, it's funny, as you read through Jonah, it says Jonah's trying to get away from the presence of God, and he finds himself in a much further place than he ever intended to be from what in that time they would have considered the heavens, the sky. Jonah was trying to avoid God, and he finds himself in the depths of the sea. I think that's kind of interesting as he is in the belly of the fish. We don't know what kind of fish, if it was a whale or, whatever it was that Jonah was in, but we do know that in that place he spends 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish. And it's there that he finally begins to realize how important it is to focus his eyes on God. I find some facts interesting about this event when Jonah is still on the boat and the sailors are able to cast lots and find out that Jonah is the culprit. He's the reason why the storm is so bad. It doesn't tell us why, but you have to kind of speculate a little bit. Was it possible for Jonah to simply say, okay, God, I will stop on my way to Tarshish, and I will instead, the next possible moment, I'll book a ship to Nineveh and I'll go. He doesn't do that. Instead, it seems that he's more willing to die than to do what God called him to do. It almost seems he's suicidal because he doesn't know that a fish is going to swallow him. He doesn't know that God's going to keep him. From all appearances' sake, certainly being thrown into this ocean is instant and definite death for Jonah. And yet he still tells the sailors, this is the only possible solution. Throw me into the sea, and then the sea will be calm. Now, we find that to be true. They throw him in the ocean. The sea is calmed. A fish, it says God appoints a fish to swallow Jonah, and there he is in the belly of the fish. And I think maybe it's that realization that Jonah was willing to go to death to avoid his call, and God still intervenes, still meets him in that place, and gives him another chance. And maybe that's what humbles Jonah. We're not really told what humbles Jonah in that moment, what makes him go from this absolute defiance of God and willing to die instead of follow God's call to where he worships God in the midst of his situation. And from the belly of the fish, he worships God and celebrates who God is and his faithfulness and his love for Jonah. And it says at the end of chapter 2 that the fish spits Jonah out onto the shore. I hope you're able to look at that prayer. You're able to look at what Jonah's going through, what it takes for God to get Jonah's attention, and that speaks to you. I hope that reality, it gets into your heart, because how many times does God have to bring us through or allow some pretty difficult circumstances in order to get our attention? How much do we have to suffer before we finally turn our eyes to God and realize not only was he there the whole time, but that his heart's breaking for us and that he loves us and he's faithful and all of these things, which sometimes our circumstances seem to convince us that's not true. And yet God has always been faithful. He's always been true. What will it take for God to get your attention? We've been talking a little bit, kind of a theme through Jonah, is this reality that we all have Ninevehs. We all have things that God has called us to. It's easy for us to say, oh my goodness, Jonah, like how ridiculous. God made it so clear to him what he was supposed to do, and Jonah just ignored God and went the other way. And yet many of us haven't made disciples. We've never walked somebody into the kingdom. We're not faithful with what we know God has called us to do in the general sense, let alone the individual specific sense that God has called us to do in our own contexts. Some of us don't even know what that is. We think because we're not hired on as clergy, that we don't, because we're not vocational ministers, that we're excused from any specific ministry, any specific missionary calling. And that's simply not true. Every single one of us is called to live on mission for God. We're all called to go and make disciples. And for many of us, we're already going. We're just not doing the whole making disciples part. We're going to work, we're going to the grocery store, we're going out into the world, and yet we're not making disciples in those places. And so we are in the same way as Jonah, running from God's call. We're not living according to what God has called us to do. What I would urge you to do is to consider how maybe we are like Jonah in that sense. We have run from God. We've run from his calling. We have intentionally gone the other way. And will it take a fish experience for us to wake up, realize that God is good, that his plan is good, and that obedience is the only way? That's a little bit about what we're going to talk about this Sunday, and that's a little bit of a cue as to where we're going in chapter 3. Chapter 3 opens up with Jonah now out of the fish with a new perspective on life, maybe a little smellier than he was in chapter 1, but he's got a new perspective on life, and he's on his way to Nineveh. And that's where we'll pick it up this coming Sunday. And I hope that you'll be able to join us. 8 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. are our services. 9:30 is our Sunday school hour. If you're not plugged into a Sunday school, highly encourage you to do so. But we hope to see you this Sunday as we dive into Jonah chapter 3. Only 2 sermons left in our Jonah series. I know it seems so short in comparison to our last series, but we're going to be, again, covering Jonah 3. So be reading Jonah 3 every day this week. And then next week, we cover and finish Jonah 4. So excited for this series. It's been a good one so far. And I hope that God is speaking to you through it, and through, certainly, especially through his word, even before you get there on Sunday mornings. God bless you all. Hope to see you again, 8 o'clock, 10:45 this Sunday. God bless you. Have a